The blood on her apron wasn't hers. Claire Whitmore stood in the kitchen of Morrison's Diner, gripping the stainless steel counter hard enough that her knuckles went white. The fluorescent lights overhead buzzed in their constant, mechanical way, a sound she'd heard every night for 3 years without really hearing it. Tonight, it felt different, sharper, like the hum that happens right before a fuse blows and everything goes dark. Behind her, the dining room had gone silent. No clinking silverware, no low conversation, no scrape of chair legs against linoleum. Just that strange, held-breath quality of a room full of people watching something they didn't understand and weren't sure they wanted to. What Claire didn't know yet, what she couldn't have known, was that the man sitting in booth 7 had been alive for 847 years, and in all that time, no human had ever stood between him and a threat. Until her. 48 hours earlier, Claire had been balancing on the edge of broke and broken, the way she'd been balancing for most of the past 2 years. She was 31. She looked older on bad days, younger when she smiled, which wasn't often anymore. Her apartment was a studio on the 4th floor of a building that smelled like burnt coffee and old carpet, and no matter how much lavender spray she used, she couldn't cover the mildew that crept along the bathroom tiles every winter. The radiator clanked at odd hours. The neighbor upstairs played Fleetwood Mac on repeat. She'd stopped noticing. Morrison's Diner sat on the corner of 8th and Walnut, a relic from the 1950s with cracked red vinyl booths and a jukebox that only worked if you hit it twice on the left side. Claire worked the graveyard shift, 11 at night until 7 in the morning, because it paid an extra $2 an hour and because her younger brother needed medication that insurance wouldn't cover. Lupus, the expensive kind. The kind that turned every month into a calculation, groceries or pills, heat or rent, survival or comfort. She was good at math now. She hadn't been in high school. That Tuesday night, the diner was nearly empty. A truck driver named Gene sat at the counter working through his 3rd cup of decaf. 2 college students shared a plate of fries in booth 3, textbooks spread between them like a barricade against the world outside. And in booth 7, near the window that overlooked the street, sat a man and a girl. Claire noticed them immediately. The girl was maybe 8 or 9, with dark curls that fell past her shoulders and eyes the color of amber held up to lamplight. She wore a blue dress with white flowers on it, old-fashioned, the kind you'd see in photographs from another era. She didn't fidget, didn't swing her legs under the table, just sat with her small hands folded, staring at the laminated menu like she was reading something sacred. The man beside her was still. Not calm, still. There was a difference, and Claire felt it in her spine the moment she looked at him. He wore a charcoal suit, perfectly tailored, no tie. His hair was dark and cut short, and his skin had that pale quality that made you think of marble statues in museums, smooth, cold, untouched by sunlight. His eyes were gray, not blue-gray or green-gray, just gray, like winter sky reflected in steel. When Claire approached their table, notepad in hand, he didn't look up. "What can I get you?" she asked. The girl glanced at the man. He nodded once, precise. "Hot chocolate," the girl said. Her voice was soft, careful, like she was used to measuring her words. "Please." Claire wrote it down. "Anything else?" The man finally looked at her. His gaze was the kind that made you forget what you'd been about to say, not because it was unkind, but because it was complete, as if he saw everything in one glance and had already decided what you were worth. "Water," he said. His voice was low, measured, with an accent she couldn't place. European, maybe? Old European. "No ice." She nodded and turned toward the kitchen. Behind her, she heard the girl whisper, "Is she nice, Papa?" "We shall see." The hot chocolate came from a packet. Claire felt vaguely guilty about that. Something about the girl made her want to do better, to offer something real instead of something instant. She added extra marshmallows, the small ones that melted fast, and brought it out with the water in a glass so clean it caught the overhead light. When she set the mug down in front of the girl, the child's face transformed. Not a smile, exactly. Something quieter. A softening around the eyes, a loosening in her shoulders, like she'd been braced for disappointment and didn't get it. "Thank you," she whispered. The man's gaze flicked to Claire again, just for a second, then back to the window. She should have walked away, should have gone back to wiping down the counter, refilling Jean's decaf, pretending the quiet booth didn't exist. Instead, she heard herself say, "You want me to warm that up if it gets cold? No charge." The girl looked at the man. He looked at Claire. "That won't be necessary," he said. But the girl smiled. It was 11:47 when the door opened and the temperature dropped. Claire was wiping down the counter, her back to the entrance, when she felt it. A shift in the air, like the moment before a storm breaks. She turned. 3 men stood just inside the doorway. They didn't look like trouble at first, dressed well, clean-shaven, but there was something wrong in the way they moved, too smooth, too synchronized, like wolves that had learned to walk upright. The one in front had blonde hair slicked back, a sharp jaw, and eyes that gleamed red in the overhead lights. No, not gleamed, reflected. Claire's stomach tightened. The man in booth 7, the one with the girl, didn't move, but his hand, resting on the table beside the water glass, curled into a fist. The blonde man smiled. "Victor," he said, his voice carrying across the diner like a bell. "How domestic." The girl went very still. The man, Victor, stood. He didn't rise the way normal people rise. He unfolded, smooth and inevitable, like something that had been compressed and was now returning to its full shape. He was taller than Claire had realized, taller than anyone needed to be. "Leave," Victor said. One word, no inflection. The blonde man's smile widened. "The accords say we can be here. Neutral ground, Victor. You know the rules. Then sit, order, and be silent." The blonde man's gaze slid past Victor, landed on the girl. "Or," he said softly, "we could discuss why you're parading your little experiment in front of humans. Does the council know she's here?" The girl's hands clenched in her lap. Claire didn't think. She stepped out from behind the counter. "Hey!" Everyone looked at her. She forced her voice steady, even though her heart was hammering hard enough to crack ribs. "You want a table or not?" The blonde man tilted his head. "Excuse me?" "I said," Claire crossed her arms, "do you want a table, or are you just here to bother my customers?" Silence. Then the blonde man laughed. It wasn't a nice sound. "Your customers," he repeated. He took a step toward her. "Do you have any idea what you're standing next to, little waitress?" "Yeah," Claire said. "A guy and his daughter trying to have hot chocolate in peace." The girl's eyes went wide. Victor moved. Not fast, but absolute. One moment he was beside the booth. The next he was between Claire and the blonde man, his back to her, his shoulders blocking her view entirely. "Enough," Victor said quietly. The air went cold. She didn't sleep that night. Even after her shift ended, even after she walked the 6 blocks home through air that tasted like frost and exhaust, even after she locked the door and checked it twice, she couldn't close her eyes without seeing the way Victor had moved. Not fast, not slow, just there, like he'd rewritten the space between one breath and the next. And the girl, the way she looked at Claire after the blonde man and his companions left, not like a child looks at a stranger who helped, like someone recognizing a shape in the dark they thought they'd lost. Claire lay on her back, staring at the water stain on the ceiling that looked like a map of somewhere she'd never been, and tried to convince herself it had been adrenaline, fear, a trick of the light. But she couldn't forget the man's skin when she'd brushed past him reaching for the water glass that had tipped during the confrontation. Cold. Not cool, cold, like touching a window in January. She didn't expect to see them again. Thursday night, 11:15, the diner was dead. Jean hadn't come in. The college students had finished their finals and disappeared for the semester. It was just Claire, the cook, a 60-year-old man named Harold who never spoke unless the grill was on fire, and the buzzing lights. Then the door opened. Victor entered first, scanning the room with that same careful precision she'd seen before. Behind him, the girl slipped in, her hand tucked into his. Claire's heart did something complicated. They took the same booth. She walked over, notepad ready, trying to keep her voice normal. "Hot chocolate?" The girl nodded. Then, hesitantly, "With extra marshmallows?" "You got it." Victor ordered water again. No ice. When Claire came back with the drinks, the girl was drawing on a paper placemat with a crayon she'd pulled from the little cup on the table. Her lines were careful, deliberate. A house, a tree, two figures holding hands. Claire set the mug down gently. "That's really good," she said. The girl looked up, smiled. "Thank you, miss." "Claire, I'm Annika." She pointed at the man. "This is my papa." Victor inclined his head, a gesture so slight it barely registered, but his eyes tracked Claire's movements like he was cataloging them for some purpose she couldn't guess. "Nice to officially meet you," Claire said. She meant it. "You were very brave," Annika said suddenly. Claire crouched down beside the booth, putting herself at eye level with the girl. "Your dad had it handled." "He always does," Annika said. Her voice carried something heavier than a child's voice should. Claire glanced at Victor. He was watching her with that same unreadable expression. "Well," Claire said quietly, "someone should have." For a moment, no one spoke. Then Annika reached out and touched Claire's hand where it rested on the table. Her fingers were cold, too. Not just cool, cold, like Victor's skin, like something that had forgotten warmth existed. Claire didn't pull away. "You're different," Annika said. "Different how?" "You didn't run." Claire smiled, though her pulse was loud in her ears. "Guess I'm stubborn." "Papa says stubborn people change the world." Claire looked at Victor again. His expression hadn't shifted, but something in his gaze had. A flicker, like light catching an edge you hadn't noticed before. "Does he now?" Claire said. Victor's mouth curved, barely. "I may have said that, once." His voice did something to the air, made it feel smaller, warmer. Claire stood, cleared her throat. "Let me know if you need anything else." She walked back to the counter, aware of their eyes on her back. Harold poked his head through the kitchen window. "Those two again?" "Yeah." "They're weird." "Yeah." "You like them." Claire glanced over her shoulder. Annika was whispering something to Victor, and he was leaning down to listen, his hand resting on the back of her head with a tenderness that made Claire's chest ache. "Yeah," she said quietly. "I think I do." They stayed for an hour. Annika drank her hot chocolate slowly, making it last, and Victor sipped his water in silence. Claire refilled the mug twice without being asked, and each time Annika's smile grew a little brighter. At 12:30, Victor placed two $20 bills on the table. "That's way too much," Claire said, walking over. "Consider it a retainer," Victor said. "For what?" "Your discretion." Claire crossed her arms. "About?" Victor stood. He was tall enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. "About what you saw, what you felt, what you suspect." Her mouth went dry. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes," he said softly, "you do." Annika slid out of the booth, still holding Victor's hand. She looked up at Claire with those amber eyes, and for the first time, Claire noticed. They didn't reflect the light quite right. They absorbed it. "Will you be here tomorrow?" Annika asked. "I work every night this week." "Good." Annika squeezed Victor's hand. "Can we come back, Papa?" Victor looked at Claire for a long moment. Then he said, "If Miss Claire permits it." Claire should have said no, should have smiled politely and let them walk out and never thought about them again. Instead, she heard herself say, "Booth 7's always open." Annika beamed. Victor's expression didn't change, but his eyes did. Something easing, like tension leaving a held breath. "Then we shall return." They left. Claire stood in the empty diner, staring at the $20 bills, and realized her hands were shaking again. Not from fear, from something she didn't have a name for yet. They came back Friday, and Saturday, and Monday. Same booth, same order. Hot chocolate, extra marshmallows, water, no ice. Each time, Annika refilled the mug twice without being asked, and each time, Annika's smile grew a little brighter. At 12:30, Victor placed two $20 bills on the table. "That's way too much," Claire said, walking over. "Consider it a retainer," Victor said. "For what?" "Your discretion." Claire crossed her arms. "About?" Victor stood. He was tall enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. "About what you saw, what you felt, what you suspect." Her mouth went dry. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes," he said softly. "You do." Annika slid out of the booth, still holding Victor's hand. She looked up at Claire with those amber eyes, and for the first time, Claire noticed. They didn't reflect the light quite right. They absorbed it. "Will you be here tomorrow?" Annika asked. "I work every night this week." "Good." Annika squeezed Victor's hand. "Can we come back, Papa?" Victor looked at Claire for a long moment. Then he said, "If Miss Claire permits it." Claire should have said no, should have smiled politely and let them walk out and never thought about them again. Instead, she heard herself say, "Booth 7's always open." Annika beamed. Victor's expression didn't change, but his eyes did. Something easing, like tension leaving a held breath. "Then we shall return." They left. Claire stood in the empty diner, staring at the $20 bills, and realized her hands were shaking again. Not from fear, from something she didn't have a name for yet. They came back Friday, and Saturday, and Monday. Same booth, same order. Hot chocolate, extra marshmallows, water, no ice. Each time, Annika drew. Houses and trees and people holding hands. Once, she drew a picture of Claire, her hair in a messy bun, a coffee pot in one hand. "That's me?" Claire asked, laughing. "You're pretty when you smile," Annika said simply. Victor, as always, watched in silence. But on Monday night, when Claire refilled his water, he spoke. "You have a scar," he said quietly, "on your wrist." Claire glanced down. The thin white line, barely visible, ran from her wrist to her palm. "Accident when I was a kid. Broken glass." "It healed well?" "I guess." She set the picture down. "Why?" "Scars are stories."
"Tories," Victor said. His gaze was distant. "Some of us carry more than others." There was weight in his words, centuries of it. Claire wanted to ask, wanted to push, but something in his stillness stopped her. "You got any?" she asked instead. Victor's lips curved, not a smile, a shadow of one. "More than I can count." It was Tuesday, exactly 1 week after the first night, when everything changed. The door opened at 11:43. The blond man walked in. He wasn't alone this time. 5 others flanked him, all dressed in dark coats, all moving with that same predatory grace. Victor was on his feet before Claire registered the threat. "Annika," he said, his voice calm but absolute, "behind me." The girl slid out of the booth, pressing herself against her father's back. The blond man smiled. "Victor, still playing house. Leave." "Can't do that." His gaze slid to Annika. "The council wants to see her. They have questions about your methods." She is under my protection. She's a violation, he said. A human child turned without sanction. You know the law. Claire's blood went cold. Turned? The word hung in the air like a guillotine. She was dying, Victor said quietly. I saved her. You doomed her. The blonde man took a step forward. And now the council will decide what to do with both of you. Annika's hand clenched in Victor's jacket. Claire didn't think. She stepped out from behind the counter. She's not going anywhere. Everyone froze. The blonde man turned, his gaze locking on her like a predator noticing movement in tall grass. Excuse me? I said. Claire's voice shook, but she forced it steady. She's not going anywhere. Claire, Victor said, his tone sharp. Do not. She's a kid, Claire said, louder now. She moved until she was standing beside Victor, her shoulder almost brushing his arm. I don't care what your laws say. You're not taking her. The blonde man stared at her. Then he laughed, low and cruel. You have no idea what you're defending. Yeah, I do. Claire met his gaze. A little girl who likes hot chocolate and draws pictures and deserves better than you dragging her off in the middle of the night. The room went silent. The blonde man smiled, faded. You're brave. Or stupid. Both, probably. Victor's hand moved so fast Claire didn't see it, and suddenly he was gripping her wrist, not hard, but firm, pulling her slightly behind him. Enough, he said, and his voice carried a resonance that made the windows rattle. You will leave, now, or I will invoke the right of sanctuary, and every vampire in this city will know you threatened a human under my protection. The blonde man's jaw clenched. The council will hear from me directly. Victor's eyes flared silver. Go. For a heartbeat, Claire thought he would refuse. Then he turned, gestured to his companions, and walked out. The door swung shut. The diner was silent, except for the hum of the lights. Victor released Claire's wrist. His hand was shaking. You, he said softly, are the most reckless human I have ever met. You're welcome, Claire said. Her legs felt like water. Annika stepped around Victor and threw her arms around Claire's waist. Claire froze. Then, slowly, she hugged her back. The girl was cold, solid, real. Thank you, Annika whispered. Claire closed her eyes. Anytime, kid. Claire didn't see them for 3 days. Booth 7 stayed empty. The diner felt bigger without them, hollower, like someone had turned down the volume on.
The world. She told herself it was better this way, safer. Whatever Victor and Annika were tangled in, she didn't need to be part of it. She told herself that every night. She didn't believe it once. On Friday, Harold found her staring at the booth during her break, a cold cup of coffee in her hands. They'll come back, he said. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you don't. Claire sighed. It's complicated. It always is. Harold leaned against the counter, his arms crossed. But that little girl looked at you like you hung the moon. And that guy, he paused, he looked at you like he forgot the moon existed until you walked in. Claire's cheeks warmed. You're imagining things. Maybe, Harold shrugged. But I've worked here 22 years. I know what people look like when they found something they didn't know they were looking for. He walked back into the kitchen before she could respond. At 2:17 in the morning, the door opened. Not Victor. A woman. She was tall, willowy, with blonde hair pulled into a sleek ponytail and skin so pale it looked translucent under the lights. She wore a gray suit, expensive, tailored, and her heels clicked against the linoleum like a countdown. She sat at the counter. Claire approached slowly, every instinct screaming that this was wrong. Coffee? No. The woman's voice was smooth, accentless. Information. We don't serve that here. The woman smiled. Her teeth were very white. You spoke with Victor. Claire's stomach dropped. I don't know who that is. Yes, you do. The woman tilted her head. You defended his progeny in front of Constantine's men. Brave. Stupid, but brave. Claire's hand tightened on her notepad. What do you want? To warn you. The woman leaned forward. Her eyes were pale blue, almost colorless. Victor is dangerous. Not because he wishes to be, but because he is. He has lived 847 years, and in that time, he has done things that would give you nightmares. He is a king among our kind, the lord of the Northern Reach. And you, Miss Claire Whitmore, yes, I know your name, you are a complication he cannot afford. Claire forced herself to breathe. If you're trying to scare me, I'm trying to save your life. The woman's expression didn't change. Victor has enemies, powerful ones. And now, because you involved yourself, they will see you as leverage. Do you understand what that means? I didn't ask for this. No, but you inserted yourself regardless. The woman stood. Stay away from him, for your own sake. She walked to the door, paused, and looked back. He will not protect you forever, she said softly. Our kind do not love. We possess. And when we lose what we possess, we burn the world. Then she was gone. Claire stood behind the counter, her pulse hammering, and tried to convince herself the woman was lying. She couldn't. Victor returned on Saturday night, alone. Claire's heart lurched when she saw him walk through the door, his coat dark, his expression unreadable. He moved to booth 7 and sat without a word. She approached slowly. Where's Annika? Safe. His voice was low, rough, like he hadn't spoken in days. Hidden. From who? Everyone. Claire slid into the booth across from him. She shouldn't have, but her feet moved before her brain caught up. A woman came by, blonde, told me to stay away from you. Victor's jaw tightened. Livia. She said you were dangerous. I am. She said you'd burn the world if you lost something you cared about. Victor's gaze lifted, locked on hers. His eyes were darker now, storm gray, and there was something raw in them. She is not wrong. Claire's throat tightened. Is Annika okay? For now. He exhaled slowly. The council has called a tribunal. They wish to determine whether I violated the accords when I turned her. Did you? Technically, yes. Why? Victor was silent for a long moment. Then, quietly. She was 8 years old. She had leukemia. Her parents were dead. The hospice had given her 3 days. His hands curled into fists on the table. I found her drawing pictures of the sun because she wanted to remember what it looked like. Claire's chest ached. So you saved her. I damned her. His voice broke just slightly. She will never grow older, never feel warmth, never die. I took her mortality because I could not bear to watch another child disappear. How long ago? 67 years. The number hit Claire like a fist. 67 years as an 8-year-old. 67 years watching the world change and staying frozen. She loves you, Claire said quietly. She should not. Victor's gaze was distant. I am selfish. And now, because of my selfishness, she is in danger. Then fight for her. I intend to. He looked at Claire again, and something in his expression shifted. But you must stay away. I don't scare easy. You should. Claire leaned forward. A week ago, you told that man I was under your protection. Was that a lie? No. Then stop trying to push me away. Victor stared at her. For the first time since she'd met him, he looked uncertain. Why? He asked. Because Annika deserves someone in her corner who isn't afraid of the council. And because... Claire hesitated. Because I think you do too. Silence. Then Victor reached across the table and placed his hand over hers. His skin was cold, but his grip was gentle. "You are a fool," he said softly. "Yeah," Claire smiled. "I've been told." At 3:08 in the morning, the diner's phone rang. Claire answered. Morrison's Diner. Breathing. Ragged. Young. "Claire?" Her blood turned to ice. "Annika? They found me." The girl's voice was shaking. "Papa told me to call you if something happened. A crash. A scream." The line went dead. Victor was on his feet before Claire lowered the phone. "Where is she?" His voice was a blade. "I don't know. She didn't think." He gripped her shoulders, not hard, but desperate. "Did you hear anything? Traffic? Voices?" Claire closed her eyes, forced herself to focus. "Water. I heard water. Like a river." Victor's eyes flared silver. "The old mill, west side." He turned toward the door. "Wait." Claire grabbed his arm. "You can't go alone." "I can. I will." "Then I'm coming with you." "Absolutely not." "She called me, Victor." Claire's voice was steel. "That means something. Let me help." He stared at her. Then, slowly, he nodded. "Stay behind me," he said. "And if I tell you to run, I know." Claire grabbed her jacket. "I run." They ran. The mill was a corpse of brick and broken glass on the west edge of the city, where the river bent and the streetlights didn't reach. Claire had driven past it 100 times and never looked twice. Now, standing in the gravel lot with Victor beside her, it looked like the mouth of something that had learned to wait. The air smelled like rust and cold water. Victor moved toward the entrance, his steps soundless. Claire followed, her breath fogging in the November.
Amber chill, her heart loud enough she was sure someone would hear it. "Stay close," Victor said without looking back. "Do not speak unless I tell you to." "Got it." The door was already open. Inside, the mill was a hollowed-out cathedral of industrial decay. Rusted machinery loomed in the shadows. Water dripped somewhere in the dark. And in the center of the space, lit by a shaft of moonlight from a collapsed section of roof, Annika knelt on the concrete floor. Her hands were bound behind her back. Constantine stood behind her, one hand resting on her shoulder. 5 other vampires formed a loose circle around them. Claire's stomach turned to lead. Victor stopped 10 feet from the circle. His voice was calm. Too calm. "Release her." Constantine smiled. "I don't think so. This is a violation of the Accords. Neutral ground. There is no neutral ground for lawbreakers." Constantine's fingers tightened on Annika's shoulder. The girl winced. "You turned a human child without sanction, Victor. The council has issued a warrant. She comes with us. Over my corpse. That can be arranged." The other vampires shifted, closing ranks. Victor's hands curled into fists. "You would start a war over this? We would enforce the law." Constantine's gaze flicked to Claire. "And it seems you've brought another complication. Does the human know what you are? Leave her out of this." "Why?" Constantine's smile widened. "She involved herself. Let her see what monsters look like when they stop pretending." Annika's eyes met Claire's across the space. They were wide, terrified, and full of something Claire recognized. The look of a child who thinks the adults have already decided she doesn't matter. Claire stepped forward. "Let her go." Constantine laughed. "Or what? Or I'll make sure every human in this city knows what you are." The laughter stopped. "You wouldn't? Try me." Claire's voice didn't shake. "I've got the mayor's personal line. My brother works for the news. One phone call and your precious secrecy is gone." Constantine's expression darkened. "That would violate the Accords. So does kidnapping a kid." Silence. One of the other vampires, a woman with short dark hair, stepped forward. "Enough, Constantine. The human has a point. Elena, the Accords protect both sides." Elena's voice was cold, measured. "If we harm the girl here, without trial, we are no better than the monsters they think we are." Constantine's jaw clenched.
"The council will convene properly." Elena looked at Victor. "But the child comes with us." "No." Victor's voice dropped, resonant, and the air seemed to thicken. "She stays with me. That is not your choice. Then make it a fight." The temperature plummeted. Claire felt it in her bones. The shift from negotiation to violence. The moment where words stopped mattering. She saw Victor's eyes flash silver to red, saw the other vampires tense, saw Constantine's hand move towards something at his belt. A knife. Silver. The blade gleamed in the moonlight, and Claire's brain screamed, "Wrong, wrong, wrong." "Victor!" she shouted. He turned, too late. Constantine moved inhumanly fast, and the knife flashed toward Annika's throat. Claire didn't think. She lunged. Her body collided with Annika's, knocking the girl sideways, and she felt the knife slice across her shoulder, a line of fire, sharp and immediate. She hit the ground hard. The mill exploded into chaos. Victor was on Constantine. In a heartbeat, moving faster than Claire's eyes could track. The crack of bone echoed off the walls. Constantine screamed. The knife clattered to the ground, and Claire saw the silver blade steaming faintly, like it was burning the air itself. The other vampires scattered. Elena shouted something, a command, a warning, but Claire couldn't hear over the roaring in her ears. Her shoulder was on fire. She pressed her hand to it and felt warm blood seeping through her jacket. Annika crawled toward her, her bound hands fumbling. "Claire!" "I'm okay," Claire lied. "Are you?" Victor was suddenly there, kneeling beside them. His hands moved over Claire's shoulder, pulling the jacket aside, and his expression went hard. "Silver," he said quietly. "What?" The blade was silver. His gaze met hers. "It is poison to us, and now it is in your blood." Claire's vision swam. "That doesn't sound great." "It is not." Victor's jaw tightened. He looked at Annika. "Untie her hands." One of the other vampires, a man Claire hadn't noticed before, stepped forward and cut Annika's bonds with a swift motion. The girl immediately grabbed Claire's good hand, squeezing tight. Victor turned to Elena. "She needs a hospital." "She needs you," Elena said quietly. Elena crouched beside them, her gaze sharp. "Silver poisoning spreads fast in humans. She has maybe an hour before it reaches her heart." Claire's pulse spiked. "What?" "There is one way to stop it." Elena looked at Victor. "Your blood." Victor went very still. "No," he said. "Victor, I will not bind her. She will die." Claire's head was spinning now, her shoulder a white-hot agony. "What are you talking about?" Elena's gaze softened. "Vampire blood can heal human wounds, but it creates a connection, a bond. You would carry part of him for the rest of your life, and I would be responsible for hers," Victor said, his voice strained. "Eternally." "Then be responsible," Annika said, suddenly, fiercely. Her amber eyes burned. "She saved me, Papa. Save her." Victor looked at his daughter, then at Claire. For a moment, Claire saw the weight in his gaze. 847 years of loss, of distance, of choosing not to care because caring hurt too much. Then he bit into his wrist. The blood was darker than it should have been, almost black in the moonlight. "Drink," he said, quietly. Claire stared at him. "I don't, please." His voice broke. "Let me do this." She took his wrist. The blood tasted like metal and smoke and something ancient. It burned going down, but the fire in her shoulder began to fade almost immediately. She felt the wound close, felt the poison dissipate, felt something else. A thread, thin and silver, tying her to the man kneeling beside her. She released his wrist. Victor's eyes were red now, fully, and they didn't leave her face. "You will be all right," he said. Claire nodded. She couldn't speak. Annika hugged her, carefully, and whispered, "Thank you." Elena stood. "The tribunal will still convene. But this," she gestured at Claire, at Victor, at the chaos, "this changes things. You shed blood to save a human who shed blood to save your progeny. The council will have to acknowledge that. Constantine, slumped against a rusted machine, spat blood. This isn't over. Yes, Victor said coldly. It is. He lifted Claire in his arms, effortless, like she weighed nothing, and turned toward the exit. Where are we going? Claire asked. Somewhere safe, Victor said. Annika walked beside them, her small hand gripping the edge of Victor's coat, and Claire, dizzy and exhausted and tied to a vampire king by blood and something she didn't have a name for yet, decided that safe sounded good. Victor's home was not what Claire expected. She'd imagined a mansion, maybe, something gothic and dramatic with stone walls and iron gates. Instead, he brought her to a brownstone on the north side of the city, tucked between a bookstore and a cafe that sold coffee at prices she'd never be able to afford. The building was old but well kept, with ivy climbing the brick and warm light glowing in the windows. It looked like a home. Annika unlocked the door with a key she pulled from her dress pocket, and they stepped inside. The interior was clean, understated, hardwood floors, a fireplace that looked used, bookshelves lining the walls packed with volumes in languages Claire didn't recognize, a couch that had seen better days but looked comfortable, a kitchen visible through an archway, modest and human-scaled. Victor set Claire down on the couch gently. "I'll make tea," Annika said, already moving toward the kitchen. Claire blinked. "She makes tea?" "She insists." Victor knelt in front of Claire, his gaze scanning her shoulder where the jacket was torn and blood-stained. "How do you feel?" "Like I got stabbed with a poisoned knife and drank vampire blood." Claire's voice came out shaky. "So, yeah, weird." Victor's mouth twitched, almost a smile. He reached out, hesitated, then gently touched the edge of the wound through the torn fabric. His fingers were cold, careful. "It has healed cleanly. There will be no scar." "Great," Claire exhaled. "What about the other thing, the bond?" Victor's hand stilled. "You will feel it more strongly at first. My presence, my emotions when they are intense. It will fade, in time, to a background awareness. And you, what do you feel?" "The same." He pulled his hand back, his gaze distant. "I will know if you are hurt, afraid, in danger. I will not be able to ignore it." Claire studied him, the sharp line of his jaw, the way his shoulders held tension like a framework built to carry weight forever, the exhaustion in his eyes that no amount of immortality could erase. "How long have you been alone?" she asked quietly. Victor's gaze snapped to hers. "I am not alone. I have Annika." "You know what I mean." He was silent for a long moment. Then, 847 years. The number settled between them like a stone. "That's a long time," Claire said. "It is an eternity." "What was it like, before?" Victor stood, moved to the window, and looked out at the street. The light from the street lamp caught his profile, all hard angles and shadows. "I was human once," he said quietly. "I had a family, a wife, 2 daughters." His voice was flat, recitation without emotion. "I was a craftsman. I built furniture. We lived in a small village in what is now Romania." Claire waited. "In 1177, a plague came. It took my wife first, then my eldest daughter. I begged God to spare the youngest." His hands clenched at his sides. "God did not answer, but something else did." "A vampire?" "Yes." Victor's reflection in the glass was motionless. "He offered me a choice. Watch her die, or let him turn her. Save her life at the cost of her mortality." Claire's chest tightened. "What did you do?" "I refused." His voice cracked, just barely. "I believed in heaven, in salvation. I thought it was better for her to die and rest with God than live as a monster." The silence was suffocating. "She died in my arms 3 hours later," Victor continued, "and I have spent every year since regretting that choice." Claire's throat burned. "Is that why you turned, Annika?"
Yes. He turned to face her. I found her in a hospice, alone, dying. And I could not— He stopped. I could not let another child slip away when I had the power to stop it. So you saved her. I doomed her. Victor's eyes were red now, faintly, and full of something raw. She will never grow up, never fall in love, never die peacefully. She is 8 years old forever, and it is my fault. Does she blame you? No. He looked away. She should. Claire stood, ignoring the faint dizziness, and crossed the room. She stopped in front of him, close enough to see the fine lines at the corners of his eyes, the way his jaw tightened with the effort of staying still. She loves you, Claire said. Not because she doesn't know better, because she does. Victor stared at her. You do not understand. I understand that you've been punishing yourself for 847 years. Her voice was steady. And I understand that Annika is alive, really alive, not just existing, because you couldn't let her go. That is not redemption. Maybe not. Claire reached out, hesitated, then placed her hand over his where it rested against the window frame. His skin was cold, but his fingers curled slightly around hers. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then Annika's voice called from the kitchen. "Tea's ready." Victor's lips curved. Not quite a smile, but close. "She is terrible at making tea," he said quietly. "I don't care." They sat around the low coffee table, mismatched mugs in hand. Annika's tea was, as promised, terrible. Too weak, faintly metallic, but Claire drank it anyway. Annika sat cross-legged on the floor, her drawing pad in her lap. She was sketching again, her lines quick and sure. "What are you drawing?" Claire asked. Annika turned the pad around. It was the three of them. Claire in the middle, Victor on one side, Annika on the other. Their hands were linked. Claire's chest tightened. "That's beautiful," she said. "It's my family," Annika said simply. She looked at Victor. "Right, Papa?" Victor's gaze met Claire's over the rim of his mug. Something passed between them, an understanding, fragile and new. "Yes," he said quietly. "It is." At 6:42 in the morning, Claire's phone buzzed. She pulled it out. A text from her brother. "Where are you? You missed your shift." She typed back. "Long story, I'm okay." Another buzz. "You better be. Don't make me worry." Claire smiled faintly. "I won't." She looked up. Victor was watching her. "You should go home," he said. "Rest." "I should." But she didn't move. "The tribunal convenes tonight," Victor continued. "The council will want to question Annika, and me. You do not need to be there. Will they hurt her? Not if I can prevent it." "Then I'm coming, Claire." "I'm coming," she repeated, her voice firm. "She called me. That means I'm part of this now, whether you like it or not." Victor exhaled slowly. Then, almost imperceptibly, he nodded. "You are the most stubborn human I have ever met." "Good," Claire said. Annika giggled. And, for the first time in a long time, Victor smiled. The tribunal was held in a place that should not have existed. Claire followed Victor down a staircase that began in the basement of a nondescript office building downtown and descended far deeper than any basement should go.
The walls were stone, old stone, the kind that remembered empires. The air grew colder with each step, and the electric lights gave way to torches mounted in iron sconces. Annika held Victor's hand tightly. Her other hand found Claire's. "It's going to be okay," Claire whispered. Annika nodded, but her grip didn't loosen. At the bottom of the stairs, a pair of massive wooden doors waited. They were carved with symbols Claire didn't recognize, spirals and stars and things that looked like letters from alphabets that had died centuries ago. Victor stopped. He looked down at Annika, then at Claire. "Once we enter," he said quietly, "you must not speak unless the council addresses you directly. Do not meet their eyes unless invited, and do not, under any circumstances, show fear."
What happens if I do? They will use it. Claire swallowed. Got it. Victor placed his hand on the door. It swung open without a sound. The chamber was vast, circular, with a domed ceiling lost in shadow. The floor was polished black stone, and at the center sat a ring of 13 chairs, each occupied by a vampire who looked like they'd been carved from marble and left to wait for the world to catch up. Claire recognized Elena, the woman from the mill, seated third from the left. The others were strangers, old strangers, the kind of old that made Victor look young. At the head of the circle sat a man, or something shaped like a man. He was tall, bone-thin, with white hair that fell past his shoulders and eyes that gleamed gold in the torchlight. He wore robes the color of dried blood. His gaze locked onto Victor the moment they entered. "Lord Victor of the Northern Reach," the man said. His voice was dry, precise, like pages turning in an ancient book. "You stand accused of violating the Accords, of turning a human child without sanction, of endangering the secrecy we have maintained for millennia. How do you answer?" Victor stepped forward, pulling Annika with him. Claire followed, her pulse loud in her ears. "Guilty," Victor said. A murmur rippled through the chamber. The man's expression didn't change. "You do not contest the charge?" "No, High Chancellor. I turned the child. I take full responsibility." "Then you understand the penalty." "I do." Claire's stomach dropped. "What penalty?" The High Chancellor's gaze slid to her. His eyes were cold, inhuman. "The human speaks out of turn." "She is under my protection," Victor said quickly. "She does not know our ways." "Then teach her silence." Claire bit her tongue, hard. The High Chancellor returned his attention to Victor. "The penalty for unauthorized transformation is death, for both the sire and the progeny." Annika's hand clenched in Claire's. "No," Claire said. Every eye in the chamber turned to her. Victor's voice was sharp. "Claire?" "No," she repeated, louder now. She stepped forward, forcing herself to meet the High Chancellor's gaze. "You can't kill her. She didn't ask for this." "The law is the law. The law is wrong." Claire's voice shook, but she didn't stop. "She was dying. She was 8 years old and dying, and he saved her. That's not a crime. That's mercy." "Mercy," the High Chancellor said slowly, "is not ours to grant. We are immortal. We do not bestow eternity lightly." "Why not?" Claire demanded. "Because it's inconvenient? Because it breaks your rules? She's a child. She didn't choose to get sick, and she didn't choose to die. He gave her a second chance. That's not—"
That's wrong. That's human. We are not human. Maybe you should be. The silence that followed was absolute. Then, impossibly, the High Chancellor smiled. It was not a kind expression. "You have courage, human, or foolishness." He leaned forward. "But tell me, if we spare the child, what guarantee do we have that this will not happen again? That every vampire with a bleeding heart will not turn every dying orphan they find?" "I don't know," Claire said. "But killing a kid to prove a point isn't justice. It's murder. It is law." "Then change the law." Another murmur, louder now. Elena stood. "High Chancellor, if I may." The man gestured. "Speak." "The human has a point," Elena said. "The Accords were written to protect us, to prevent reckless transformation. But they were also written in a time when vampires turned humans out of cruelty, not compassion." She looked at Victor. "Lord Victor saved this child's life. He did not drain her. He did not abandon her. He has raised her, protected her for 67 years. That is not violation. That is stewardship. Stewardship without sanction is still violation, another council member said. A woman with silver hair and a voice like frost. Then sanction it retroactively, Elena replied. Acknowledge that the circumstances were extraordinary. Set a precedent. Transformation to save a life with the intent to nurture and protect is permissible under review. The High Chancellor's gaze narrowed. You propose we rewrite the Accords? I propose we evolve them. The chamber erupted in voices, some angry, some thoughtful, some disbelieving. Claire looked at Victor. He was staring at Elena like he'd never seen her before. The High Chancellor raised a hand. Silence fell instantly. This is unprecedented. So is this, Elena replied. The High Chancellor looked at Victor, then at Annika, then finally at Claire. The human shed her blood to protect the child, he said slowly, and the sire bound himself to her. This is no small thing. No, High Chancellor, Victor said quietly. It is not. Very well. The High Chancellor leaned back. We will deliberate. You will wait outside. They were escorted to a small antechamber. Stone walls, a single bench, no windows. Annika sat between Victor and Claire, her head resting on her father's shoulder. What happens now? Claire asked. They decide, Victor said. And we wait. How long? Hours, days, however long it takes. Claire exhaled. This is the worst waiting room I've ever been in. Annika giggled, muffled against Victor's coat. Victor's lips twitched. You did not have to speak. Yes, I did. You risked your life again. Yeah, well. Claire looked at Annika, then at Victor. You're worth it. Victor's expression softened. He reached out, hesitated, then placed his hand over Claire's where it rested on the bench between them. Thank you, he said quietly. Before Claire could respond, the door opened. Elena stepped inside. Her face was unreadable. They have decided. The council chamber was silent when they returned. The 13 vampires sat motionless, their faces carved from shadow and stone. The High Chancellor stood at the center of the circle, his hands clasped behind his back. We have deliberated, he said. His voice echoed in the vast space. And we have reached a verdict. Claire's heart hammered. Annika's hand squeezed hers. Victor stood perfectly still. The council acknowledges, the High Chancellor continued. That the circumstances of this case are extraordinary. That Lord Victor acted not out of malice, but out of mercy. That the child has been nurtured and protected, not exploited. However, the High Chancellor said, and her chest tightened again, mercy without accountability is chaos. If we allow this transformation to stand unsanctioned, we set a precedent that undermines the very foundation of the Accords. Then what do you propose? Victor's voice was controlled, but Claire heard the edge in it. A bond, the High Chancellor said. Not between you and the child, that already exists, but between you and the one who defended her. Claire's stomach dropped. What? The High Chancellor's gaze locked on her. You shed blood to protect this child. You invoked yourself in matters beyond your understanding. You claimed the right to speak in this chamber. He stepped closer. If you wish the child to live, you must take responsibility for her continued existence. I don't understand. A blood oath, Elena said quietly from her seat. An ancient bond. You would swear, before the council, to act as the child's guardian along Victor, to ensure she abides by the Accords, to answer for her actions as if they were your own. And if she fails, the High Chancellor added, you die. Silence. Claire stared at him. You want me to tie your mortal life to an immortal child? The High Chancellor's expression was unreadable. It is unprecedented, but then so is this entire situation. Victor moved, placing himself between Claire and the council. Absolutely not. It was not a request, Lord Victor. The High Chancellor's tone was final. The Council has voted. If the human refuses, the child's sentence stands. Both of you will be executed at dawn. You cannot ask this of her. We are not asking, the High Chancellor said coldly. We are offering a choice. Claire stepped around Victor. Her legs felt like water, but she forced herself to stand steady. What does the oath involve? Claire, no. Victor's hand closed around her wrist. She looked at him. His eyes were wide, desperate, more emotion than she'd ever seen in them. What does it involve? Elena stood. You would share blood with the child. Not enough to turn you. Only a few drops, symbolic. The bond would tie your life to hers. If she violates the accords, you suffer the consequences. If she thrives, you... She hesitated. You remain connected. Indefinitely. For how long? For as long as you live. Claire looked at Annika. The girl was crying silently, tears streaking her pale cheeks. Will it hurt her? Claire asked. No, Elena said gently. It will only bind you. Claire turned back to Victor. His grip on her wrist was trembling. Don't do this, he said, his voice breaking. I cannot, I will not ask this of you. You're not asking, Claire said quietly. I'm offering. Claire, I'm not letting her die. She pulled her wrist free, gently, and stepped toward the center of the circle. I'll do it. The chamber seemed to exhale. The High Chancellor nodded. Then approach. Annika was brought forward by Elena. The girl's hands were shaking. It's okay, Claire whispered, kneeling in front of her. You don't have to do this, Annika said, her voice small. Yeah, Claire said, smiling through the fear. I do. The High Chancellor produced a small silver knife. Plain, functional, nothing like the ornate 8-blade Constantine had wielded. Your hand, he said to Claire. She held it out, palm up. He made a shallow cut across her palm. The pain was sharp but brief. Blood welled, dark and immediate. And the child's. Annika held out her hand. The High Chancellor made a matching cut. Join them. Claire pressed her palm to Annika's. The moment their blood touched, the world shifted. Claire felt it. A thread of light, thin and unbreakable, snapping into place between them. She felt Annika's fear, her relief, her overwhelming love. She felt Victor's presence, closer now, like a second heartbeat layered over her own. And she felt something older, heavier, the weight of the oath settling into her bones. Speak the words, the High Chancellor said. Elena stepped forward and placed a hand on Claire's shoulder. Repeat after me. I bind my blood to hers. I bind my blood to hers, Claire said. Her voice was steady. I accept her fate as my own. I accept her fate as my own. I swear before the Council to guard her life as I would guard my own soul. Claire's throat tightened. I swear before the Council to guard her life as I would guard my own soul. The High Chancellor raised his hand. It is done. The thread of light flared, bright and blinding, then settled into something warm and constant beneath Claire's ribs. Annika threw her arms around Claire's neck. Claire held her tight. Victor knelt beside them. His hand rested on Claire's back, and when she looked at him, his eyes were red and wet. You should not have done that, he said. Too late. You have bound yourself to eternity. No, Claire said, cupping his face with her free hand. I've bound myself to family. His composure shattered. He pulled both of them into his arms, and for the first time in 847 years, Victor wept. Dawn broke over the city in shades of gold and gray. Claire stood on the rooftop of Victor's brownstone, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders, watching the light spill across the skyline. Her palm was bandaged. The bond hummed faintly beneath her ribs, a second pulse that wasn't hers, but felt like it could be. Behind her, the roof access door opened. Victor stepped out, 2 mugs in his hands. He offered her one. "Tea," he said. "Real tea, not Annika's." Claire smiled. "She's gonna be offended. She is asleep." He stood beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. "She has not slept soundly in weeks. She's safe now. Because of you." Claire sipped the tea. It was good, earthy, warm, exactly what she needed. The council really let us go. They honored the oath. Victor's gaze was distant. And they amended the accords. Transformation to save a life will now be reviewed on a case-by-case basis, rather than condemned outright. That's good. It is revolutionary. He looked at her. "You changed a law that stood for 1,000 years. We changed it," Claire corrected. "All of us." Victor was silent for a moment. Then, "You gave up your freedom. I chose a different kind. You will carry this bond for the rest of your life. You will feel her joys and her sorrows. And when she suffers, you will suffer." "Yeah," Claire met his gaze. And you deserve better. I have exactly what I want." She set the mug down on the ledge and turned to face him fully. "I have a kid who draws me pictures, a vampire king who makes decent tea, and a family I didn't know I was looking for." Victor's throat worked. "I do not know how to repay this."
This. You don't have to. Claire reached out and took his hand. His skin was cold, but his fingers laced through hers like they'd been doing it for years. "Just let me stay." "For how long?" "For as long as I've got." Something in his expression broke open. Centuries of distance collapsing into something raw and real. "That will not be long enough," he said quietly. "Then we'll make it count." He leaned forward, rested his forehead against hers. His breath was cool. His presence was steady. And for the first time in a long time, Claire felt like she'd found solid ground. "You are extraordinary," Victor whispered. "I'm a waitress who got in over her head. You are the woman who defended my daughter when no one else would, who bound herself to eternity for a child she barely knew, who stood before the council and told them their laws were wrong." His hand came up, cradling the side of her face. "You are the most remarkable human I have ever met." Claire's chest ached. "You're not so bad yourself." He smiled, a real smile, full and unguarded. Then he kissed her. It was soft, careful, like he was afraid she'd disappear if he pressed too hard. His lips were cool, but the intention behind them was warm. 847 years of loneliness meeting one mortal woman who refused to let him carry it alone. When they pulled apart, Claire was breathless. "Wow," she said. Victor's smile widened. "Indeed." The door opened again. Annika padded out, rubbing her eyes, her hair a mess of curls. "Are you kissing?" Victor straightened. "We were talking. You were kissing. I saw." Claire laughed. "Come here, kid." Annika crossed the roof and wrapped her arms around Claire's waist. Claire held her close, one hand resting on her head. "Did you sleep okay?" Claire asked. "Yeah." Annika looked up at her. "I dreamed we were all at the diner. You made me hot chocolate, and Papa smiled. That sounds like a good dream." It was. Annika glanced at Victor, then back at Claire. "Are you staying?" "Yeah," Claire said. "I'm staying." Annika beamed. Victor's hand found Claire's again, and this time he didn't let go. 6 months later, Claire still worked at Morrison's diner, but now Victor and Annika came in every night. Same booth, same order. Hot chocolate, extra marshmallows, water, no ice. And sometimes, when the diner was empty and the world was quiet, Victor would reach across the table and take Claire's hand, and Annika would draw pictures of the three of them, and it would feel like the most normal thing in the world. Because it was. Claire had spent 31 years looking for a place to belong. She'd found it in booth 7. One night, as Claire refilled Victor's water for the 3rd time, he looked up at her with those silver eyes and said, "I have something for you." "Yeah?" He reached into his coat and pulled out a small box. Claire's heart skipped. "Victor, open it." Inside was a key. "To the brownstone," Victor said quietly. "In case you wish to stop commuting."
Claire stared at him. "Are you asking me to move in? I am asking you to come home." Annika, sitting beside him, grinned. "Please say yes." Claire looked at the key, at the girl, at the man who had lived 847 years and somehow found space in all that time for her. "Yes," she said. And for the first time in a very long time, the diner felt too small to hold the size of what she was feeling.